Let's be honest, DC's newest heroes are getting weird, and not in the good way. And maybe it's not in the best way. Today we're going to dive into the freshest faces of the DC universe, the characters that are so new, so out there, that they make you question, what's going on over at Detective Comics? Who's making these characters up? But who are these new characters and why do they exist? Well, that's why you're here. First up is Gold Beetle, and let's be blunt, she's the poster child for everything wrong with DC's obsession with convoluted legacy characters. Part Rip Hunter, part Booster Gold, all time traveling, legacy, confusion, you name it. This amalgamation of a Blue Beetle descendant and Booster Gold's future son, or something like that. I mean, trying to explain her family tree without getting a headache is merely impossible. She popped up first during Flash Forward and then made a splash in Dark Crisis. She's a walking, talking paradox with scarab-powered suit and a time sphere, seemingly existing solely to further complicate that already convoluted timelines of the DCU. And let's not forget that blatant attempt to capitalize on the popularity of both Booster Gold and Blue Beetle by just mashing their lineages together. Is this fan service or is it just lazy writing? Or it's both. Her existence begs the question, are we adding new characters just to make everything more complex, to create the illusion of depth where there's really just more tangled continuity? Gold Beetle feels less like a character and more like this walking, talking plot device designed to facilitate time travel, shenanigans, and little else. While some may find her chaotic energy fun, others will see her as a symbol of DC's increasing inability to create these truly original characters without leaning heavily on pre-existing lore, twisting it into this improbable shape. Next up, we have Flatline. Her power to steal skills from the deceased. This is basically just Taskmaster with a goth makeover. Now, Flatline has a genuine cool power. She can absorb the knowledge and skills of the deceased. She made her first debut in 2021, and she's a protege of Lord Deathman and a significant antagonist during the Robin series. She represents a shift towards a more horror-tinged corner of the DCU, which could be interesting if it wasn't so heavy-handed. But is she truly unique, or is her goth ninja necromancer aesthetic just a trendy repacking of tropes that we've already seen before? We've seen the learn from others ability countless times, and the edgy look feels more like a marketing ploy than a genuine character trait. Her power set in particular is rather convenient, if you want to say, bordering on overpowered. If a character gets a little too powerful, she can always conveniently take a piece of them away, leaving them weaker for the next issue, every single time, only to repeat the same pattern again and again. She exists to nerf other characters when the plot demands it, which isn't always that entertaining. Does she have the agency of her own, or is she just a tool to manipulate the power levers of those around her? There's something to be said about having a character steal abilities from specific important characters at specific important times in DC's history, but that doesn't seem to be what they're going for here. Phantom 1, the Kryptonian tragically transformed into a being of phantom energy in the Warworld saga, perfectly exemplifies a growing trend in superhero comics where new characters are primarily designed as narrative tools just to propel the arcs of these established icons, rather than existing as this fully fledged individual. Check this out, her entire existence, from her heartbreaking backstory to her visually stunning yet plot convenient powers, this all serves to illuminate the cruelty of Mongol, challenge Superman's compassion and strength, and ultimately highlight his inherent heroism in the face of Warworld's horrors. While her suffering invokes pathos, Phantom 1 is a less of a character in her own right and more of a catalyst for Superman's development, raising the concerns that the weight of the legacy and the pressures of the comic book industry are increasingly leading to the creation of new heroes whose primary function is to service the narrative of these already established characters, leaving them of course underdeveloped and ultimately disposable within the broader superhero landscape. It's like you're made just for the plot, and then when the plot's settled, now you go away. It's not really fair. Monkey Prince is DC's attempt to do a Marvel scenario, but it might be falling short. Inspired by the iconic Sun Wukong, Monkey Prince brings this much needed dose of Chinese mythology to the DC universe, a positive step towards diversifying its roster, and his solo series certainly shows DC's commitment to the character. However, his irreverent, joke-cracking personality, while true to his mythological roots, often feels jarring and out of place within the generically more somber tone of the DCU, particularly when he's interacting with legacy characters. Furthermore, his design, while sure it's visually striking, it does lean heavily on the traditional imagery, which some may find overly stereotypical and bordering on caricature, raising questions about whether DC is genuinely embracing these cultural representations or simply leaning on these well-worn tropes just for a quick win. While his powers in connection to a legendary figure, I mean, this is undeniable, Monkey Prince does walk a fine line between paying homage and caricature, and his comedic tone risks undercutting the character's potential for these meaningful integrations into the DC universe. Circuit Breaker is proof that DC is ticking boxes, not breaking new ground per se. While their introduction as a non-binary hero is able to tap into the Still Force in DC's Pride 2022 anthology, this was a commendable step towards inclusivity, but Circuit Breaker has since languished in relative obscurity, highlighting this recurring problem with how DC handles its newer, more diverse characters. Being relegated to a one short story and then a minor appearance in the Greater Lazarus Planet event where they had little to no impact at all, this severely limits the potential for meaningful character development and exploration of their powers. This raises the crucial question, are characters like Circuit Breaker truly being given a fair chance to shine, or are they merely being used as these tokens to fill a diversity quota, introduced with fanfare and then sidelined in favor of these established cisgender heterosexual heroes that we already know? Without dedicated series or more substantial roles in major storylines, heroes like Circuit Breaker risk becoming footnotes in DC history. Their potential as compelling and representative characters tragically is left unfulfilled. Xanthe is a diversity prop, not a developed character in the overhyped Yara Flor saga. While the introduction of Xanthe, a transgender Amazon, in the pages of Yara Flor's Wonder Girl is undoubtedly a step forward for representation within the, traditional cisgender-dominated world of Themyscira, it's hard to ignore the fact that her character feels more like a symbolic gesture than a fully realized individual, right? A common theme we've seen so far in this list. Like Circuit Breaker, Xanthe suffers from a severe lack of development, with her powers, backstory, and motivations remaining largely unexplored, leaving her as little more than a background figure in Yara Flor's narrative. Again, she's just a pawn in this other character's established world. This raises the uncomfortable question of whether DC is truly committed to developing these diverse characters, or if they're simply using them to just bolster the perceived inclusivity of established storylines, ultimately reducing them to tokens in a larger, more familiar narrative. Without dedicated exploration and meaningful storylines, Xanthe risks becoming just another face in the crowd, or the book in this sense. A missed opportunity to expand the Amazon mythos in a truly impactful way. City Boy, okay, this guy can, talk to cities. That's his power. He just literally, I do that every day on the way to work, but I don't look very super while I do it. He made his debut in the Wildstorm 30th anniversary special, and he's positioned as the urban counterpart to Swamp Thing. Now, City Boy represents an attempt to connect with a younger, more city-focused audience, hence his name, but is his power set more of a gimmick than a substance? And does the constant comparison to Swamp Thing hinder his ability to stand on his own as a unique character? Even though he predates a lot of the other heroes on the list, Roundhouse is still a relatively new addition to the DCU. He made his first appearance in Teen Titans Special back in 2018. Roundhouse, aka Billy Woo, is a social media obsessed teen with the ability to turn into a ball and bounce around. Yeah, he loves TikTok and he's also a ball. That's not bad, that's a power I can get behind. He's also, for some reason, a trained martial artist, because I guess the story demands it at some points. And he's meant to be the comic relief, the TikTok-loving Gen Z hero of Teen Titans. It's just what we wanted, right? But does his characterization sometimes fall into the trap of being a walking stereotype? And do his powers, while visually fun, actually make him an effective member of the team?